Okay, let's have a look at this latest batch of introductions. An opinion essay. This question was reported, I think, somewhere in Turkey earlier in the year. The government should spend money to encourage the development of sport and art for school students rather than supporting professional sports and art performances for the general public. Do you agree or disagree with your own opinion? So my introduction at first. So as I mentioned before, sentence 1, we need to paraphrase the topic. Then sentence 2 or 3 can be one sentence, can be 2. It's not important. We need to give some indication of, we need to give our clear opinion, and then I always give some indication of where the essay is going. Okay, so let's take a look at the paraphrasing at first. So the government should spend, so I made that into state spending, essentially, because that's it. That's if the government spends a money, state spending. So state spending the government should spend to encourage the development. Okay, so I changed that form to should be directed, so it should be aimed to develop. Sport and art, I left it the same because you don't have to change every single word. School students, I made it for schools, which is basically the same thing. Rather, instead, so you just change that. Rather, instead, rather than supporting professional sports and art performances for the general public, so professional sports and art performers for the general public becomes professional performers for public entertainment. Okay, so you can see how I've paraphrased that. My clear opinion, I agree with this expenditure. Okay, the expenditure on schools. So I've got my clear opinion. I agree with this expenditure as the best use of taxpayer money to help students. So in paragraph 2, I'd be talking about how taxpayers' cash, because it's not the government's cash. It's basically yours. It's ours. Anybody who pays tax is government expenditure. So I would be talking about, as the money the government spends is ours, it should help our children. Okay. And then the second idea, if people want to see professionals, professional paid entertainers, then you should pay for it, or they should pay for it themselves instead of asking the state to pay and support them. Okay. So that's the two ideas I would use if I were to write this essay. So we've got a few introductions here. I'm not sure. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Well, we'll see. I was only planning to do 10 because it does take a bit of time, but we'll get on with these. And I think I included everybody. I think there was one guy who posted 2, I think, but I've only included 1. So I think 13 is the number for today. So let's see. The government is supposed to. Well, supposed to is not really should. If it should, it's ought to. So it's not quite the same thing. Is supposed to invest in the schools. Now, I won't use a definite article because we haven't introduced schools yet. So, and it's like schools in general terms. So, as I mentioned before, if it's an abstract noun, make it a plural. In school or schools, art and sports facilities to encourage the students taking part in these kind of programs, which are more beneficial. Does it say anything about encourage the development of, oh well, okay, which are more beneficial for our society in comparison. Right, now this is a bit long sentence, right? This is a bit of a, nearly a run-on sentence. It's a little bit long. Which are more beneficial for our society in comparison to make it. Now, you don't make expenses. I think you mean making money, which is not quite the same thing. For only professional sports people and artists. Now, I am completely agreed. So why is it, so I completely agree. It's not I am completely agreed with this theory. Well, it's not a theory, is it? It's a statement. Though I believe that we'll, don't use contractions in your formal writing, get professional levels for both in long period time, in a long period or over a long period of time, if our spending is focused on students. So some minor grammar points there, but apart from that, that's not bad. It is believed that governments, so either the government or governments, ought to. So I believe that governments, because it's a plural, because it's an abstract noun, ought to invest. You can't invest a budget. Can't invest it. You can invest money, invest cash, but you can't invest a budget. That's something else. You can direct a budget towards or something, but you can't invest a budget. Ought to invest money, or as I did it, expenditure, to develop school student skills in field art sport instead of supporting continuous professional sportsmen and artists. My point of view, a bit on to stretch this, but okay, that's good. I would, apart from money, budget, and make that a present participle, verb plus ing. Apart from that, that's pretty good. Some people believe that government's budget should be mainly invested in improving sports art for school students, rather than sponsoring athletic and art performances for the general public. And where's your opinion? You have to include it in your introduction. Where's your opinion? No idea. So that's simply a restatement of the topic. He said that the authorities is not necessarily the government or state, should invest money in pupils. Okay. I would have said for children, maybe pupils. Okay. So as to improve their skills in art and sport rather than supporting professional artists and athletes. Okay, that's good. Completely agree. Spending money in schools while professionals working with supporting them is a waste of it. Now, that's pretty good. I'm just changing this article here because waste of resources, when you introduce an idea or concept for the first time, you usually use an indefinite article. If you were to mention waste of resources later, you would use a definite article. So apart from that, that's pretty good. The governments should fund sport and art at schools so as to motivate pupils. Motivate, encourage, that's good. Instead of investing in elite sportsmen's, sports people's, and art performances for the public. I agree with statement. Students could cultivate their abilities, I put comma, as well as entertainers could be sponsored by patrons rather than states. Abilities as well as, because using as well as means at the same time, which is not quite, a student should cultivate their abilities also, or whereas would be better, because you're there indicating a contrast. Whereas entertainers could be sponsored by patrons rather than states. So that's pretty good. I would have just put this here to indicate there's a contrast. Okay? But apart from that, that's good. In comparison with spending money for professional athletes, well, usually spend money on, not spending it for. The state ought to consider more financial support for development of sport and art among school students. I wouldn't use a definite article there because you're talking about school students in general. I agree that the statement or argue the importance of performing arts sport for teenagers. Teenagers, you don't have to say that, just say the schools, because we don't really know the age of these people. In a long-term plan, we're practicing supporting the professionals. Okay, that's good. That's pretty good, right? Instead of allotting, I think you spell that, yeah, two T's. Allotting budget. Well, budget, it's either the budget or a budget, or budget is a verb. Okay. To professional sports and arts performances, government is advised, but it doesn't say anything about advise. Who is advising the government? Who is providing such advice? It doesn't say that. To spend money on motivating the expansion. How can you motivate expansion? You can motivate students to expand, but you can't motivate expansion. Can't really do that. In my opinion, while this may stimulate what students basically mentioned feels of a short time back, that's a little bit long. It will backfire in the long run by damping that. Why would it back? Okay, we'd have to wait for the essay to see how that works. How such a myopic attitude overlooks the fact that the best ones for future chance of result must be supported. Well, that is very interesting. I'd be interested to see where that essay actually went. That's not bad at all. The government ought to allocate money to develop sports and art for students rather than encouraging professional sports and arts for people. I strongly agree with it or with this, as these activities can bring fun and self-growth for children. Okay, that's short and to the point, but that's good. Doesn't say anything about how much. Don't include things that it doesn't say. Is allocated to professional. I don't think it is. I don't think a large part of a nation's budget is allocated to support professional sports. I seriously doubt that. Some small portion, but it's not a large part of a nation's budget. That's spent on defence, healthcare, education, not professional sports. However, some people believe that the government should stop spending on, because you usually spend on, should stop spending on these activities, and instead focus on supporting schools and encouraging students to take up sports and arts. I strongly agree with this argument because the expenditure to support professional arts is expensive. It's not a big deal it's not a big deal for a country to join all kinds of sports. I don't know what that means, what the connection is there, but it's not. So that's okay. That's not bad, but I think including things that's not in the topic can lead you into a bit of difficulty when you have to explain it at a later stage. Okay, the money spent by governments for organising sports competition and art performance. Well, they don't organise it; they just spend it. They give it to various sports bodies and organisations, and they do the organising. So the government doesn't actually do it. It should be directed towards facilitating opportunities. That's good. For art and sport development at schools. I totally agree that smart will assist students be creative and healthy. Okay, that's good. If a government has to decide okay, again, you've got to watch what the topic is. It doesn't say anything about making a decision. It says governments should. In other words, it would be good for the government, for the state, or they ought to. It would be good for the state to do something. It's not talking about, do they have a choice? Are they making a decision? If a government has to decide which should spend the public money, because we haven't introduced it yet, so we don't need a definite article on the advancements, but I would urge you to put the former before the latter. I think modern governments are expected to concentrate on infrastructure and gender policies, private markets. Professionals work partners and on their own and be independent. Okay, it's a little bit lengthy, but that's not bad. That's got some good points there. We have to see how the rest of the essay works. I just watch the definite articles. When you introduce something for the first time, you use an indefinite article, or if it's an abstract noun, you don't use an article at all. So it's public money in general, free market forces in general. It's not specific free market forces. But aside from that's pretty good. You could have shortened that and made that more concise, but still not too bad. Professional sports related unusual. Okay, nothing to do with the topic. You need to avoid. I would avoid these generalizations, these like very broad scope statements, as are sometimes termed. You don't really need it. I would, however, strongly agree with spending budget. Spending budget on developing these subjects among children. Okay, because it would give rise to far or more benefits by far, not to by far more benefits. I would have made this part of the previous sentence. I wouldn't have made it like a second sentence. This policy not only promotes physical and emotional being of students, but also be a way to find the best talents and train them significantly. Can you train someone significantly? I don't think so. I don't know if that adverb quite works there, but not bad in general. It has been suggested, in comparison with spending financial resources to high skilled or highly skilled, make it an adjective. As I agree, as you agree that it has been suggested, or as you agree, a considerable amount of something. I'm not sure what you are agreeing with. So hang on. It has been suggested that in comparison with spending financial resources on highly skilled athletes, instead, so we need some contrasting word. As I agree, instead, a considerable amount of funding ought to be invested to persuade developing, you don't need that. You could simply make this your main verb, to develop the artistic sense of pupils as well as their athletic abilities. Okay, so that would work, I think. Right, that's not so bad. So there's my introduction, and you've seen and heard my comments for the rest. I'll leave it there.